Part 4. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 31. Chapter 31 Faith. Colin Huron turned around and saw that Villa was standing not far away. Under the cold moonlight, Colin was surprised to find that the Duke's adopted daughter did not wear the large mage robe, but replaced it with a pure white noble dress. The golden hair is still with a silk water vapor, which seems to have just bathed. The blue eyes shone with a charming halo, and it also revealed a trace of surprise after seeing Colin. "Can't sleep, so come out for a walk. Didn't you sleep either?" "Haha, I just communicated with the Knight Cavaliers to fight against the trolls." Marquis of Jew Charles patted Colin's shoulder and gave him an ambiguous look. "I slept first, talk to both of you." After saying this, Marquis Charles decisively drilled back to his camp, leaving Colin and Villa alone. Colin suddenly realized that since his injuries have improved, he has not seen Vera for a while. Looking at the other person's delicate face, Colin suddenly laughed and made a bold evaluation. "Your dress is much better than the mage robe." Indeed, the mage's robe is too loose to highlight Vera's Meoman figure. After hearing Colin's boring and rude comment, Vera's face rose faintly. She glanced hard, but she did not scold. Colin will certainly not be frightened by a look. All women's non-tough resistances are actually a kind of encouragement. Therefore, Colin greeted him and stood side by side with Vera. On a quiet night, there was only a vague bug. Vera looked up at the bright moon, as if he didn't realize that there was a man beside him. Colin did not break this rare silence, and looked up at the moon together. There was a light fragrance in the nose. "It seems to be a rose flower." "What is the flower language of the rose flower?" "Nympho." Colin began to think about it again. "Do you know your brother before?" Vera suddenly said. It seemed that the atmosphere at the moment was too ambiguous, and she was not used to it. "No, this is the first time we have seen." "But do you look familiar?" "That's because we can talk about it?" "Yeah. Yes." Colin didn't speak anymore, and continued to look at the moon in the sky, as if it was something more attractive than the beauty beside him. The two were silent again. Vera was waiting for Colin to speak, but Colin was waiting for Vila's mouth. The intentional creation of silence made women embarrassed, and they couldn't help but take the initiative to break the silence. This is a simple and practical little trick. Don't be afraid that women will be angry. As long as they are appropriate, they will not. Instead, you will feel that such a cold man is more attractive. And those men who are always looking for the topic seem to be noisy. Women generally call these men lick dog. "What are you taking in your hand?" "Sure enough," Vera said again. Khalil was happy, but a sad expression on his face. Deep tone, "This is my father's relics." "Ah, sorry," Villa hurt in his heart, and quickly apologized. "Please also sorrow." Colin was relieved, and seemed to want to squeeze out a few drops of tears. But it was not successful. No way, no matter how good actors, they also need a good opponent to play. At this time, Colin suddenly missed the Marquis of Charles just now. "I'm fine. The battle to die is the wish of my father's life, and it is also the best destination of the Northern Cavaliers. Baron Angra is a great knight." Vera bowed slightly and paid tribute to the big sword in the hands of Colin. Clinton suddenly stunned. He almost doubted that his ears had hallucinations. The female mage was praying to the Lord of Glorious. Intersection. Is this the heresy that only believes in the truth and does not believe in the gods? Wyro looked up and saw the shocked Colin, and suddenly realized that the other party was surprised, and explained softly. "Yes, I decided to serve the Lord of Guanghui." "Really, real?" Vera nodded lightly, his expression was firm and pious. "Why?" Khalil still couldn't believe it. He knew how much a mage would cause the storm if a mage turned to the Lord of Guanghui. "The mages of Jeveli will be crazy." I just think that the experience of escaping was too thrilling before, as if the gods were protecting, so, I decided to convert to the Lord of Glory. Vera's eyes dodged a little, and strange blush appeared on her face. The female mage was obviously not good at lying, and was easily seen by Colin. However, he was not stupid enough to expose it. You have made the right choice, the Lord of Glorious deserves to be served seriously. Khalil responded piously. At the same time, he couldn't help doubt that Vera went to Yellville to study Olympic race, and then returned to the north to serve the Lord of Guanghui. But why? At this time, is it really wise to exaggerate the contradiction between the nobles and the mage? It seemed to see Colin's concerns, and Villa quickly explained. Rest assured, I will not publicly declare that I will serve the Lord of Guanghui. I don't want to cause unnecessary trouble. Colin was relieved. But I couldn't help wondering to the real reason why Vera changed faith. Vera will certainly not tell the real reasons why. At least at this time. It seemed to have thought of something ashamed, and her little face became red. This of course attracted the attention of Colin's inquiry. But before Colin asked, Vera hurriedly said goodbye to Colin, and then hurried back to his camp. As if a frightened little deer. Colin looked at the back of the other party, thinking of Vera's last cute shy look, and couldn't help but touch his chin. Then Cao Bao's thoughts, is my charm so great? It must be because my face exactly like the Reader Master. After a lot of pride, Colin also walked back. Karn Cavaliers. Half the road, a shout suddenly sounded beside Colin. He certainly did not respond because he was not called him. Karn Cavaliers. The other party called again. Are you calling me? Colin turned his head and saw a figure walking towards himself. Of course the coming person was a young lady. But the exquisite plate on her body, the silver sword on the waist, and the knight boots on her feet all showed her identity. This is a female knight. A heroic knight? However, Colin did not know her. You recognize the wrong person. My name is Colin. Really? The female cavaliers showed a mysterious smile and came to Colin to stand. The light jasmine fragrance drilled into the nose of Corin, which made him doubt, was he going to take the peach blossom today? Sure enough, the reader's appearance is still too lethal to women. But in the next second, when the female knight reported her name, Colin's proud smile immediately solidified on his face. My name is Zendaya. The female knight's smile was full of meaning. Zendaya Pseudo. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 32. Chapter 32. Cindy Sujuo. What are the consequences of lying? Pinoco's nose will become longer. Vera's face becomes red. Marquis Charles. Well, for guys like Marquis in Charles, lying is the same as eating and drinking water. Colin believes that there may not be a superior to the Marquis of Charles, but when he lies, it is difficult for ordinary people to see the clue. However, this does not mean that he will not have the consequences. No, the consequences come now. When he heard the female knight's last name Suduo, Colin finally reacted. No wonder she called him Karn Cavaliers. In order to hide the Firefox mercenary corps, in order to hide the identity, it was not the pseudonym of Khan Suduo. It's okay now, Zhen Suduo has found a fake Suduo. I think there may be some minor misunderstandings in it. Colin stepped back halfway, with some guilty conscience. What misunderstandings? Cynthia took a step forward, and asked aggressively, my good brother hasn't seen it for a few months. Your change is quite big, I almost didn't recognize it. Well, it turns out that this guy is the sister of Khan Suduo. Since these days, the Black Cavalry has gathered northward, and has gathered a lot of scattered soldiers who defeated from the front line. The Binjian city of the Suduo family has long been occupied by the trolls, and the family army has been defeated. Therefore, it is not surprising that Zendaya will appear here. What is strange for Collins is how she knew that she had taken the identity of her brother. Knowing that he used to be a fake status, there were certain people, and someone must have reported it. I do know why. The first figure that emerged in Khalil was Sal. This filial piety has always been failed to deal with him, and his mind is complicated, and he likes to make right and wrong. So Collins felt that it was likely that this guy incited Zendaya to come to him. Miss Zendaya, please listen to me to explain. Okay, you say. Actually, this is the case. Oh, what are you pulling your sword? Colin was frightened and retreated. Did you let me say it? Yes, you can say, but I can't listen. Cindy held a sword with both hands and put on an assault posture. Mother said, never believe in a man who deceived you. What messy. Colin suspected that this lady was afraid of a bit of trouble in their brains. Don't come here, this is a barracks, not allowed to fight privately. For the reputation of the Suduo family, I want to duel with you. Pick up the sword. Cynthia dropped a white glove and yelled loudly. I don't accept it. Colin ignored the white gloves on the ground. He couldn't figure it out. Why did this woman, even if he did not listen, he would duel it? Is there such a big hatred? Oh, coward, I count to 3, and then launch an attack. Zendaya obviously does not care about military regulations such as private fighting. These things are actually used to restrain the lower-level soldiers. For the nobles, it is not effective. 1. Zendaya's voice is as hard as iron. Colin's forehead exuded cold sweat, holding his right hand to hold his horn involuntarily. He has already understood that this woman is afraid that it will be unreasonable. Since he can't speak, he is not afraid of fighting. In the face of the charge of nearly 1,000 wolf cavalry, Colin also pushed in the front row without fear. Now just one woman, of course, can't be scared. What's more, thanks to the sanctuary of Bishop Ruin, Colin has been promoted to a second-order knight. At this age, the second level is already quite high. The crazy woman on the opposite side looks like him, and it should not exceed this level. 2. Zendaya also reported again, his complexion was indifferent. Colin took a deep breath and pulled out the sword around his waist. Then he saw the female knight opposite immediately turned into a golden lightning and rushed to himself. Do it, didn't you say that it was good to 3? Well. Colin only felt a huge impact. He seemed to be hit by a tank front, and the whole person flew out. Depend on. This crazy woman may be a third-order knight? The Lord of Glorious, shine in the world. Zendaya also read prayer with empty gods. With the golden sanctuary emitted from her, the scene was extremely middle. But Colin was not free, because the other party split again. Dang. Colin barely blocked, but his huge impact made him numb with his hands, and could hardly hold the sword. My heart is holy, wandering evil. Cynthia's pupils have become pure gold, without a trace of human emotions, indifferent like gods. Well. Colin was kicked out. This time, it was far away, and I directly turned over a nearby tent. The soldiers in the tent ran out of panic, but saw Cynthia, who was rushing to gold. Then they tacitly put away the sword in their hands and hid obediently to watch the war. The two cavaliers were dueling, and of course the soldiers did not dare to go away. Oh! Colin spit out blood and felt that his ribs should have broken a lot of roots. Woman, don't be too much. Of course, this threat will not be put in the eyes of Samaya, and she still rushes over firmly. No fear, no one. The arrogant gesture of the opponent finally irritated Corin. Ah! Colin made a beast-like roar. An indescribable anger and hatred in memory rolled out, instantly dominated his will. It was a will that does not belong to Colin, does not belong to the predecessor, or even belongs to this world. As if the abyss from ancient times, the time and space that span 10,000 years suddenly came. Moonlight flows, reflects behind Colin. There. Vaguely. As if there was a horrible figure. It is showing a bloody teeth with blood, stretching the huge black wings. In the golden eyes of Cynthia, there was a moment of mistakes, thinking that he had an illusion, and the momentum of the front rushing was also interrupted. But soon, she converged again. Firm and devout, wearing a chop. Cut NM. Colin roared, and instantly broke out of unprecedented horror power, and a sword stabbed. The armor on the chest of Cynthia was broken away, and the scattered iron films flew around. The blood was stained with her shirt, and the buttons on the chest were also collapsed several times, showing a little beautiful scenery. But Cynthia seemed to be unaware of it, and was not scared by the extraordinary play of Colin just now. I saw her calmly holding her body, and prayed again in her mouth. Firm and devotion, wearing thorns. Then, charge again. As if nothing, it can block this woman. Collins was a little lacking at this time. The blow just now, although the effect was horrible, he actually made him cross the first step and suppressed Cynthia. However, he almost took time to his whole body strength. So, in the face of the crazy woman who rushed over again, Collins' eyes flashed. He made a decision. The long sword shone with golden glory, and the lightning was generally pierced to the chest. Colin, don't avoid it. Cynthia looked at the long sword piercing the opponent's chest, but her heart was full of fear. Because of the Collins sword. Just against her throat. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Logo Busroot. Chapter 33. Chapter 33. Let go. The Colin mouth overflowed with blood, but his tone was calm and tough. The golden color in Cynthia's eyes gradually retreated, and reason gradually returned. So, in the face of the blood-red man in front of her, she was scared. Crazy is always afraid of more crazy lunatic. As a result, Cynthia opened the hands of holding the sword. Colin did not go to control the long sword that pierced his chest, as if it did not exist at all. Who told you, I used your brother's name? Don't you have to deal with your wound first? Don't talk nonsense. Khalil was slightly hard, and the sword signed a slight wound at the throat of Cynthia. Crazy. Cynthia cursed in her heart. In this man dominated by men, a female knight in Cynthia naturally takes more criticism and doubts. That's why she put a thick layer of armor with a crazy appearance. The female lunatic of the Suduo family. The church's crazy belief. Bloodthirsty wild rose. Nympho. Although these titles are not very nice, it does make Cynthia no one dare to mess with it in Bingian City. But now, looking at the man with a long sword in front of him, but the man who looked extremely indifferent, Cynthia had to lower his proud head. Oliver. When I heard the name, Colin stunned. Isn't it Desiazi Sal? It was the fat merchant who once hired the Firefox mercenary corps to escort the caravan to the Falcon City. The guy did not die in Jinghu camp. It's really fate. Where is he? As soon as Colin asked the sentence, he saw that there was a fat figure in the crowd. The crowd flashed, and it seemed to be running. Oliver, I saw you, get it over if you don't want to die. The fat figure stood in place immediately. After he was tangled for a while, he finally came over with a dide. Say, how did you meet this crazy woman? Why did you sell me? Oliver shook his head in a row. I didn't betray. Say, Khalil was full of sound. Oliver was scared and trembled, and finally began to tell. It turned out that when Oliver was attacked at the Jinghu camp, he decisively jumped into Jinghu for survival. His water is not good. However, he has a lot of fat. As we all know, the density of fat is smaller than water. Therefore, fat people are generally easy to float on the water. Oliver drifted in the lake for 3 days and 3 nights, and finally leaned on the shore when he was hungry. At this time, the main force of the giant had left Jinghu. Therefore, Oliver escaped. Later, he met a wave of defeat, and ran south with them. Halfway, they met Zendaya, who was coming from the Felling Eagle City. After hearing the news of the Black Rider north, it was hesitated with his own. In fact, after the death of the Viscount Suduo, his first heir, that is, the guy that Colin had faked, Con Suduo led the army to regain the Bingian city. In this way, the Suduo family can restore the position and glory. However, not everyone can regain confidence after defeat, and once again enter the bloody and cruel battlefield. The Cane Knight is obviously a scared guy. Therefore, he can only be led by his sister, Zendaya Suduo. However, the army of the Suduo family had long been defeated. Obviously, Count Umon could not go all out to lend his strength to the Suduo family, and it was quite generous to give hundreds of soldiers for her niece. Therefore, Cynthia, who is extremely absent, will naturally not let Olean gangsters defeat. They could not help each other, forcing them to continue fighting for the Suduo family. Her behavior is strictly illegal. However, the Suduo family territory was gone, and Zendaya took care of these. What's more, she was a crazy guy. However, Oliver was miserable. He finally got rid of the Mirror Lake battlefield, and now he is going to be rushed to the shelves. He already has a psychological shadow, but he doesn't want to be a cannon fodder anymore. So Oliver found Seema, trying to say that the other party let go. He is still a little confident. After all, he feels that he and the first heir of the Suduo family Con Knight can also be regarded as an old acquaintance who has worked together. However, when Zendaya saw this businessman who claimed to go to the Eagle City with his brother all the way to the Wing City, he immediately revealed it. The real Con Sudo fled to the Felling City with her. How could she have a relationship with a caravan? Zendaya certainly felt that this was a lie. Poor Oliver was fat, and then honestly. But after Zendaya led the army with the Black Army, Oliver saw a front line of light. Because he saw the old acquaintance in the logistics soldier of the Black Army to Exiza Sal. From the mouth of Sal, Oliver finally understood why he was fat by Samaya. Because that Con Knight turned out to be fake. Oliver was aggrieved in his heart, but dared to say it. After all, as a civilian, how can he tell a nobleman? But under the fear of the world, Sal encouraged the cricket. Oliver still confessed everything to Zendaya. The statement was not him, but Colin. But Zendaya will not easily believe in a civilian. In her opinion, it is the Knight Cavaliers of the nobles. The Suduo family is now on the edge of collapse. What are the benefits of fake his heirs? Facing Seema's questioning, Oliver panicked. He couldn't figure out why Colin was lying. In a hurry, he suddenly remembered that he had promised to Collins and was willing to help him with a bridge. Collins did not agree. Of course, there is no opposition. Without objection, it is basically equal to consent. Therefore, Oliver simply adhered to the idea of the deadly friend of the dead, and told Cycles that the heirs of the Colin fake Suduo family wanted to use this to deceive the financial support of the Tulip Chamber of Commerce. This seems to be the only reasonable explanation. So Zendaya was furious. Someone dared to deceive the layman through the name of the Suduo family. Today's Suduo family is so disappointed that there is only one name left, and Zendaya naturally cannot make this name defile. After she asked Oliver to recognize Colin from the camp, she came to find trouble while the other person was alone. After listening to Oliver's cause and consequences of the matter, Khalil's heart was angry. Sure enough, he guessed right. Still Saul's guy. Colin stared fiercely at Seema. I can clearly tell you that it is a reason to use your brother's name, and I have never used the name of the Suduo family. Now I have received a sword, even if this is the case. After all, Colin retracted the sword that arrived in the throat of Seema. Cynthia snorted coldly and left. This crazy woman seems unconvinced. But this matter itself is a linked loser, so it is not easy to make Zendaya However, Sal and Oliva, Colin did not intend to let it go easily. So, Colin turned his head to Oliver. You go to find Sal and bring me. Tell him not to think about running, otherwise the consequences will be at your own risk. Okay, but your injury. Oliver looked at the long sword on Colin's chest, secretly shocked. I'm okay. As soon as Khalil's voice fell, he heard Vera's anxious voice. Colin, what's wrong with you? It seems that the movement of the troubles here still alarmed the female mage. At this time, the Knight Cavaliers, who were still stable as Titian, suddenly became crumbling. I saw him pressing his chest hard, and his expression screamed slightly exaggeratedly, no, ah. Then I poured up. But the timing of his felling happened to be quite good, just fell into Vera's arms that rushed. When I felt the familiar soft touch, Colin tried to spit out a blood. Hurry, go to the great Bishop Rywin, holy water. Vera's expression of sobbing expression, but, the sanctuary of the great bishop has been used up. Colin. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 34. Chapter 34 Bingian City. Spring is bright and cloudless. A minor drama last night did not have much impact in the army. As soon as it was bright, the army set off as usual, and continued to chase the trace of the troll north. Of course, the word chasing is not very appropriate, because the speed of the Black Army is too slow. Generally, Colin feels that the Marquis of Garcia seems to be waiting intentionally. Moreover, at such a slow speed, I am afraid that the giant army has evacuated the north. Maybe, this is the plan of the Marquis of Garcia? Win without fighting? Although he was full of doubt, Collins did not dare to question the highest commander of the Black Army. Moreover, here, even throughout the north, no one dares to question the Marquis's military orders. Behind the Turtle Army, Colin lay back on a flat trailer that had just said goodbye to Long. In fact, his injuries looked scary this time, but there was no danger at all. Wyra was scared lightly, and once again brought Bishop Rywin, and asked him to put a treatment for Colin himself. The treatment of the great bishop in person is indeed very good. Just one night, Colin had felt itchy wounds, and there were signs of healing. But he was not too happy. After all, what he wants is not treatment, but holy water. Unfortunately, the sanctuary of the Grand Bishop really uses light. Hey, wasted a good show he played. It seems that in the future, I have to find a way to teach some holy water. After all, compared to the blood of high-level knights, the pure holy water is rare, but it is relatively easy to obtain. Moreover, safety and stability is risky. When Colin was lying on the trailer and started to fight the church's idea, Oliver rushed over and reported. Master Collins, Saul, he ran away. Colin glanced at the sweaty fat man, and the color of his face flashed. If Sal dares to run, then Collins will give him a fugitive charges that will make him unable to mix the whole northern border. No, he didn't run. Don't he dare to come? Collins was a little surprised. A little mercenary dare not listen to the aristocratic order? Colin was about to let the Raymond Cavaliers slaughter the filial piety, but heard Oliver shook his head and said. No, Sal has joined the team of the Suduo family. When I asked the Cindy Cavaliers, she. What do she say? Colin's voice was a little cold. Oliver shrank his head and whispered, she said, you are not qualified to order the people of the Suduo family. Oh, Colin's face flashed. The great filial son could see the situation clearly, and he hugged a thick leg so soon. And the crazy woman of the Suduo family seems to be really going to confront Collins. With a deep breath, Colin took a moment. He felt that he didn't need to worry. The Suduo family who lost the land was just yesterday, and how long can the crazy woman shelter Sal? Sooner or later, the filial piety will be sent to hell to reunite with his father. However, This time, Colin seemed to have some misconduct. Because just a few days later, Benjian City was recovered by the Suduo family. Moreover, the entire recovery process is simple and incredible. When the Black Army slowly swallowed to the north, he found that not only did he encounter any giants on the way, but even those cities that were once occupied, the trolls completely gave up. Yes, give up completely. The troll soldiers inside went through, as if they had passed in the future. As a result, those escape lords who were gathered by the Black Army along the way suddenly came to the spirit. They led their defeats, killed into those empty cities, and announced that they had recovered their land. Because the Black Army is maintaining order. However, there is no situation where you are fighting for me. The lords tacitly only led the army to enter their original landing, and did not snatch the city of others. There are even a few families that even the heirs are dead, and no one dares to occupy the territory. After all, the victory this time was completely built on the names of the Black Army. The rest of the lords followed the Black Army to pick up cheap. If you do know how to take advantage of your own things, the Marquis of Garcia will not be polite to them. Those lords, from the perspective of the lords, naturally give it to the Marquis of Garcia to deal with it. Therefore, no matter how Colin grit his teeth and how to curse the shit of the Suduo family, Zendaya has recovered Benjian City without blood. The Suduo family seemed to be revived. Subsequently, the Black Army was stationed in the outskirts of Benjian City. Benjian City is the closest city of the northeast of the north to the sky. The Marquis of Garcia seems to be preparing to stay here, and it does not mean to continue to counterattack the trolls north. Sinthan, who regained Benjian City, was proud of the spring breeze, and immediately invited a number of aristocrats such as Marquis of Garcia into Benjian City, and announced that they would hold a banquet 3 days later to celebrate the big victory. Colin also received a banquet invitation, but he felt that the crazy woman did not mean to show his suspicion with him. Although it was not a hungman banquet, Colin felt that Zendaya would never let him be better at the banquet. Of course, Colin is not scared. He also wanted to see what the crazy woman arranged for him. Hope not to disappoint yourself. Oliver Colin stepped down the banquet in his hand and summoned. Adult, what are you instructed? These days, Oliver has been called by Colin as a servant, which is considered to disclose the punishment of his false identity secrets. I need a banquet dress. Do you know which tailor shop in Benjian City can make it? Colin was secretly slipped out this time, and naturally he would not bring something like a dress. Oliver heard the words, and quickly put on a charming smile. Master Climate, our Tulip Chamber of Commerce will have a station in Benjian City, where there are absolutely superb tailor masters, which can help you make a beautiful dress. Colin looked at Oliver with a smile and didn't speak. Until the fat merchants looked hair and sweat their foreheads. Okay, then go where you said. Yes, Oliver was relieved. After seeing the ruthlessness that Colin showed in the battle with Seema that night, Oliver was particularly afraid of the heir of the Baron. Even if Oliver had faced other nobles with higher jaws, no one could bring him such a great pressure. When Khalil did not agree to Oliver's suggestion as soon as possible, he immediately realized that he had said something wrong. Because the Tulip Chamber of Commerce is Oliver's site, he suggested that he finds a tailor. Apparently a bit wants to take the opportunity to get rid of the control of Colin. However, Colin agreed. This makes Oliver even more disturbed. The banquet was 3 days later, and the time was relatively urgent, so the two did not delay, and immediately went to Oliver's tulips. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 35. Chapter 35 Armor. Tulip Chamber of Commerce is located in the center of the east of the city at Benjian City. The area of the station is quite large and the facade is quite luxurious. Your Tulip Chamber of Commerce is developing well here. Hey, you have won the prize. Oliver couldn't hide it. Here is very close to the sky ice field. Most of the transactions of our Chamber of Commerce and the Troll must be transferred from Bingian City standing point. That's right, although the northern border and the Trolls were almost hit out of the brain slurry, the trade on both sides had never stopped. War returns to war, trade belongs to trade. This is a two-code thing. After all, the benefits involved in it are too great, even if the nobles in the north are unwilling to terminate the trade with the Trolls. Of course, it is not that a businessman can be qualified to carry out such foreign trade. The Tulip Chamber of Commerce can share a cup, obviously there is a background. Where is your Chamber of Commerce headquarters? Falling the Eagle City. Oliver said, a city name that is very familiar with Colin. It is not exactly the city that Sister Khalil marries, and the lord there is Count Uman. It turned out that the background of the Tulip Chamber of Commerce turned out to be him. Colin's look is a bit funny. He has always suspected that the assassination of his own is behind the scenes. Since the nobles behind the Tulip Chamber of Commerce may also be the Count of Uman, then he is so shocking with Oliver into the opponent's sphere of influence. Vote the net? However, Colin was not too worried. Earl Moomin would not be stupid enough to assassinate a baronair within his sphere of influence, so he would definitely not be able to get rid of it. Lord Oliver, it's really good to be fine. I heard that you went to Jinghu Barak, I thought. As soon as she entered the door, a little girl with freckles yelled at Oliver excitement. Oliver nodded, of course I am okay. Go to find Jack, an adult needs him to help him make a banquet dress. The freckles girl was embarrassed. Sorry, Lord Oliver, Mr. Jack was sent into the castle by the Suduo family, saying that he wanted to design a dress for adults who attended the banquet. Oliver stunned and said to Colin, Master Colin, I did not expect that the Suduo family had been arranged for a long time. I think you may soon be invited to go to the castle to tailor the size. Really? Colin sneered for a while. He wouldn't think that crazy woman would be kind to invite him to make a dress. Even he already had a hunch, which was probably a small means that Zendaya deliberately revealed his revenge. Thinking of this, Colin asked to the freckles girl, do you know how many tailors did the Suduo family invite to the castle? I heard that a little bit of tailoring in the city has been recruited. Many adults who attended the banquet this time did not seem to carry a dress because they went out, so the Suduo family was ready to concentrate on the system. Sure enough. This time, Khalil finally convinced that the 8 crazy women wanted him to make him ugly on a dress problem. Seeing the silence of Collins, the freckles girl carefully proposed, this adult, if you need to make a dress, Mr. Jack's apprentice is still in the store, he may help you. Apprentice, before Collins spoke, Oliver scolded loudly, let the furry guy make a dress for a nobleman, are you water into the water? Freckle girl shrank her head, and she couldn't speak grievances. Colin will also give up the dressing of the dress to a tailor apprentice. Of course, he will not go to the castle of the Suduo family to ask for that crazy woman. So, how do you find a suitable dress in such a short time? Kalinma was holding his chin. After thinking about it for a long time, he suddenly asked, is there a armor in your shop? Of course, Oliver hurriedly said loudly. Please come with me. Colin followed Oliver to a room and looked at it at a glance, all kinds of armor inside. Adults, this is the boutique collected by our Chamber of Commerce, including plate armor, locks, and even enchanting armor. Also attachment armor. Clinton suddenly became interested. The so-called enchantment is to portray the law array on the surface of the armor, and then ask the mage to give the French array enchanting to allow the armor to have various Olympic characteristics. This is not a simple matter. First of all, it is necessary to portray the complicated law array on the armor, which requires extremely superb forging levels. Secondly, the cost of the mage to attach the enchantment is also extremely expensive. Therefore, a set of enchanting armor often sells sky-high prices. The set of armor that belonged to his own in castle was not an enchantment, and the only set of enchanting armor in the Angra family was of course worn on his father. Unfortunately, the set of enchanting armor died with his father's fighting, and it should be the warrior of the troll. Therefore, Colin followed Oliver's guidance to the only set of enchanting armor in the room. This is a set of pure white armor with gorgeous and mysterious lines, exuding a faint ice-cold atmosphere. This set of armor is attached to the fourth order method Frost Blessing. When attacked, the frost impact can be erupted, causing damage to the attacker, Oliver explained. Fourth order formation. Colin remembers that the set of enchanting armor of the Angra family ancestors also portrayed a second order array. How much is this set of enchanting armor? Colin was excited. Oliver muttered with an old blacksmith for a moment, and then reported a sky-high price, 50,000 gold coins. How much? Khalil's face was incredible. You know, the entire Angra family has a taxes for a year, only 3,000 gold coins. In other words, even if the Angra family did not eat or drink for 10 years, I couldn't afford the set of armor. No wonder the Angle family's only second-order enchanting armor was regarded as a aerogenic treasure. Colin looked at the set of enchanting armor and turned around. This is not what he can afford. And even if you buy iron, I am afraid that you can't afford it. What about this set? Colin asked. Another set of unrefined armor. This set of 2,000 gold coins. Colin took a cold breath and was painful. However, he also knows that this exquisite workmanship is generally not cheap. Can I pay the deposit first? I will notify the Grey Castle for the end. Oliver heard the words, and then gritted his teeth after thinking for a while. Master Climate, if you fancy the set of armor, I can give it to you for free. Free? Colin smiled. He did not believe that there were free things in this world. There is a price, but some costs are not in the form of money. That's right, Oliver sang. I accidentally destroyed your relationship with the Suduo family before, and it also hurts you. Therefore, this set of armor is the apology I expressed to you. Sure enough, after the fat man returned to the Tulip Chamber of Commerce, he began to try to get rid of the control of Colin. This free armor is actually Oliver's redeem cost. Okay, I accepted your apology. Seeing Oliver's apology is still sincere, Colin decided not to investigate the previous things. Later, he found a paper pen and drawing a roaring bear head, and behind it was the kite shield emblem with thorns pattern. You helped me engrave the badge of the Angle family and sent it to my residence within 3 days. Okay. After the explanation, Colin was ready to get up and leave. Lord Collins, the banquet dress, Oliver reminded. I already have a way to dress up, you don't need to worry about it. Colin turned back and showed a deep smile. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 36. Chapter 36 Banquet, Part 1. 3 days passed by. The dinner of the Suduo family arrived as scheduled. The night fell, and the car was hoarse in front of the castle in the center of Benjian City, and a large number of nobles who came to attend the banquet gathered. I have to say that the timing of Sima Suduo's selection is extremely clever. The influence of the Suduo family was impossible to invite such a large number of nobles to participate in the banquet. But at this time coincided with the withdrawal of the giant army to withdraw from the north, the lost castles were easily recovered by one. Although some self-deception, how could it be barely regarded as a victory? Moreover, the only 2 marquis in the north happened to be in Benjian City. Under such circumstances, unless the Duke of St. Hilda personally hosted a banquet in the Winter City in person, otherwise, Benjian City tonight is destined to become the focus of the north. The dinner starts at 6:30. At 5:30. He came alone. This is a high-standard noble banquet, and it is naturally impossible to allow guests to bring civilian servants to enter. The Raymond Cavaliers were barely qualified to participate, but he had been sent back to Grey Castle Town by Colin. Colin feels that he can now be regarded as a person who can have a relationship with the two heirs of the St. Hilda family. Presumably, Count Umon dare not be too expensive. Therefore, there is no need to hide in the dark anymore. So he sent Raymond to go back to inform, so as not to think that he was dead and gave birth to a mess. Sorry, please show the invitation letter. When the guard in front of the castle saw Colin, his face suddenly became extremely exciting, and he stopped asking. Colin took the invitation letter and gave it to the guard. The guard took it quickly, and then carefully verified it. After confirming that it was correct, he had to let go. Sorry, the Colin Cavaliers will cause you trouble. Welcome to come to the dinner, please come in. Colin, then Shiren entered the castle. Along the way, after seeing him, everyone was embarrassed with surprise, and even many people secretly pointed out, whispering what was talked about. Colin didn't care about these eyes, and continued to walk towards the banquet hall. This Cavaliers, please wait. Unfortunately, he was stopped by the steward of the Suduo family at the door of the hall. At a glance, the steward recognized the Angle family's badge and said with a smile, "Are you the Knight Cavaliers?" Yes. Colin hugged his chest with both hands, thinking about whether to punch the fake smile on the housekeeper's face with a punch. I do not know if I have heard of the prestige of Colin, or feel the danger. The housekeeper took a step back later. Sorry, the Knight Cavaliers, you can't wear armor to attend this banquet. Yes, Colin couldn't find a dress, so he simply wore the armor you just bought. It stands to reason that this is indeed quite rude. However, Colin had long been prepared. I saw that he asked in a hurry and asked, "What should I wear?" "Of course you should wear a dress." The housekeeper's eyes seemed to be looking at a fool. He even started to signal the guard next to him, ready to drive the rude knight out of the castle. "Dress," Colin sneered, suddenly hitting his chest armor with a punch. Big Channel, the northern border was just affected by this big humiliation. Do you still have the thoughts here and dress up here, singing and dancing? What about our counterattack? What about our revenge? What about our blood? Why did we do nothing? I'm just a little knight, not qualified to question the decisions of adults. But I feel worthless for my father who died on the front line, Baron Angra. As his only son, I've out here, without reporting this revenge, never unloading armor." The audience is silent. Colin's righteous words seemed to press the pause button to the scene. Everyone was stunned at the weird man wearing armor to attend the banquet. Especially the old housekeeper of the Suduo family. Until this moment, his brain was buzzing. I don't know if it was shocked by Colin's big voice, or was shocked by what he said. At this time, he also knew that he could not drive this rude knight out of the castle according to the original plan. Colin is really rude, but he has a righteousness. Strictly speaking, the banquet is indeed a taste of peace. But this is not because the previous defeat came too suddenly, and the retreat of the troll was too unexpected. As a result, those lords and nobles who easily recovered the land needed to hide their current failure and preach their current victory. Therefore, the banquet that celebrated the victory appeared under the promotion of all parties. Unexpectedly, now there are people who come up and tear up the false mask of this victory and smash it on the face of the nobles. Among the crowd, Sima Suduo is also there. I wanted to look at the ugliness of Khalil, a nasty guy who was kicked out of the castle, but did not expect that she saw this scene. Zendaya almost bites silver teeth, but at the same time, a regret appeared in her heart. This banquet was an excellent opportunity for the Suduo family to be famous, but now it seems to be a joke. It's all because of a person. A person who was originally insignificant. A person she wanted to play with a small means. Perhaps it should not be more. Colin did not know that the crazy woman in Sima was watching him, and still looked like a righteousness. He ignored the eyes from the surrounding area, and the no one stepped forward. Well. The old housekeeper who was still in the god was hit by Colin. But he didn't dare to stop it. Watching Colin wearing the pure white armor and walking into the banquet hall. Many nobles who have gathered in the hall have gathered in the hall. When they saw the figure of Colin walk into the hall, everyone's faces were different, and they talked with each other. Obviously, Colin's loud voice had just passed those bold words into the banquet hall. Therefore, he took it for granted the focus of the banquet. However, no one came to say hello to him. Obviously, Colin was isolated. But he didn't care. Even full of pleasure. After all, this is a banquet planned by that crazy woman. I wanted to be famous for the Suduo family, but now, it seems that it has been completely destroyed by Colin's remarks. There is still a little time before the banquet officially begins. Therefore, the nobles who participated in the conference were still arriving one after another. The new people clearly feel that the atmosphere in the hall seems to be something wrong. After asking others, I realized that it was a good thing for Colin. As a result, there are more and more attention to Colin. Colin also felt some boredom and closed his eyes. Over time, the status of the person is getting higher and higher. Until Marquis Charles appeared at the door of the hall. Then, the banquet suddenly quietly came down again. This is not because the prestige of Marquis of Charles in the nobles. On the contrary, because of the previous series of defeats, his reputation among the northern aristocracy is very unbearable. But his appearance still made the audience silent again. Because he also wore an armor. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 37. Chapter 37 Banquet, Middle. When Charles walked into the banquet hall, he was full of ambition. When the crowd shocked him, he was confident. However, when the banquet hall fell into a long silence, he felt a little strange. Tonight's dress is for a long time. Even, he had prepared a generous speech, waiting for someone to ask him, "Dear Marquis, how do you wear armor to attend the banquet?" But, why has no one always asked? Marquis Charles was deeply disappointed. These people are so stupid that they can't even give him a word. So he coughed a few times and prepared to answer himself. You must be curious, why don't I wear a dress? Because I have no face to wear. Marquis Charles took a deep breath and closed her eyes. When I opened it again, it was already tears. The giant army retreated, but did we really win? You all ask yourself. When the Marquis of Charles said here, he swept the audience with a distressed eyes. But at a certain position, he suddenly stuck. Because, he saw the unique figure in the crowd at a glance, Colin. Then, he was not good for him. Colin also saw Marquis Charles at this time. Then, he was not good for him. I wore armor to participate in the banquet because I was so forced by that crazy woman. What show do you do? The entire banquet hall was silent. 10 seconds have passed. 20 seconds passed. 30 seconds passed. Colin Knight. Finally, Marquis Charles yelled affectionately, breaking this disturbing, embarrassing silence. I saw him walk a few steps and came to Colin. Facing the Marquis of Charles, who was wearing a couple with himself, instinctively panicked. He subconsciously shrank his hands back. But unfortunately, still grabbed by Marquis of Charles. The Colin Knight, Marquis Charles held Colin's hands tightly. I know, there is always the same as me in the north, but I dare to pick up the weapons, put on the armor, and put on the armor, and 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 the armor warriors who died in a giant. Colin Chiang endured the urge to pull his hands back, quickly adjusted his expression on his face, and also appeared in an impassioned look. I can only do my best to perform with your performance. But Collins is a little ashamed than the performance of the jaws of Charles. For example, the other party's tears survived, but forced the exquisite control of the tears that did not let the tears flow down, and Colin could not ask himself. Master Marquis, Colin's tone gradually choked. I don't get revenge for my father a day, I will not unload the armor for a day, ask Master Marquis to reorganize the horse and lead us to counterattack the sky ice field. Please rest assured, I will not let you down. The two film emperors looked at each other affectionately, and the base love was 4 shots. But you have disappointed us. A bland voice came from the door of the hall. The sound was not loud, but the whole hall was quiet. Moreover, this person's words showed disdain for Marquis of Charles, but none of them were present. Even the Marquis of Charles himself, although a well-prepared performance was interrupted, but he only heard the embarrassing and guilty look. At the same time, the crowd immediately separated on both sides, giving the people at the door a spacious passage. Marquis Garcia appeared at the door. Behind him, followed the dress with Villa. The 2 armored men finally stopped the sensational viewing, turned around, and tried to the 2 of the 2 who walked into the hall at this time. The Marquis of Garcia was wearing a dark blue dress today. He looked cold and walked quickly from the crowd. He didn't stop when he passed by Colin and Marquis of Charles. They didn't even look at them. It seems that the farce of the 2 is a little unsatisfactory. As a person with the highest status at this banquet today, the Marquis of Garcia is very important. Seeing that he did not ignore the 2 armor men, the nobles who participated in the conference were relieved, such as the release. However, although the Marquis of Garcia is a well-deserved focus today, now, the real focus at the venue is another person. At least, all the men at the scene, their eyes were on the slender figure behind the Marquis of Garcia. Colin is certainly no exception. Varadanite tonight is suffocating. She was wearing a pure white slit dress long skirt, her dazzling golden hair fell on her smooth shoulder, her blue eyes seemed to be pure in the sea, and the height ratio of 1 meter was very good. Each of her body is woven into a addicted curve. What makes it difficult for the men and nobles in the banquet is that Vera has almost perfect exquisite face. Moreover, the mysterious mystery of the mage, the dignified and elegant of the nobles, and the gentle girl of the young girl have been perfectly fused on her, exuding a fatal attractiveness. Who is she? Many male nobles have begun to whisper to Villa's identity. The Duke's adopted daughter is really mysterious. Colin did not find any information about her from the memory of her predecessor, as if the Duke of St. Hill deliberately covered her existence. However, the Marquis of Garcia seemed to officially introduce the beauty to the north today. Before the banquet starts, please allow me to introduce this beautiful lady around me. The Marquis of Garcia introduced Vera to the high platform in the front row of the hall, and introduced Vera St. Hilda, Duke of St. Hilda. Wow! Hearing Vera's true identity, the eyes of the men and nobles in the audience were even more fierce. There was only one thought left in their brains: marrying her. Dreams are always there, otherwise what is the difference between salted fish? The Marquis of Garcia seemed to see the thoughts of everyone, so he no longer delayed. When he immediately lifted a higher wine glass, he said, "The banquet tonight officially begins, everyone, enjoy it. Praise the Marquis. Nympho." As soon as the church in Garcia fell, the beautiful music began to sound. The banquet officially opened. Sure enough, Miss Villa was immediately surrounded by many male nobles. Regardless of their identity, almost all unmarried men present want to try if they have the opportunity to hold the beauty. After all, women like Vera, who are all chosen for a while, are the best marriage targets. As for whether it is tall or not, you have to try it first. Vera was familiar with the nobles who came to the coming. It seemed that this scene was nothing to her. Her every move revealed the atmosphere of the Duke's daughter, polite and resolutely rejected a wave of men. "Don't you try," Marquis Charles touched the Colin beside him with his elbows. Go Khalil's old god looked like, but always give others a chance to try it. Marquis Jill Charles heard the strong self-confidence contained in Khalil's words, and suddenly a little sideways. "Hey, don't blame me without reminding you at the banquet today, there are many young men who are above you." Colin shrugged, ignoring Charles's warning, but picked up a cup of champagne from the tray of the passing waiter and tasted it carefully. Seeing this, Marquis Charles suddenly turned her eyes and felt that she was really worried. At this time, many men and women have danced in the middle of the banquet hall. But Vera has not received an invitation from any man. Finally, the bee butterfly surrounding her was defeated one by one, and Colin put down the wine glass and walked towards Vera. "Beautiful and distinguished lady, can I be fortunate to invite you to dance together?" Colin bowed slightly and stretched out his right hand to Villa. Vera's face appeared on a faint blush, and placed his right hand in the hands of Colin, obediently. Good. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 38. Chapter 38 Banquet, below. Along with the melodious music, a pair of dancing strokes danced to men and women in the dance floor of the banquet hall. They danced the most orthodox court dance of the Glory Empire. Similar to Vienna waltz on the earth. Men and women's dance partners need to rely on each other, harmonize and lightly complete a series of anti-body, swing, rotation, and the entire dance steps are brisk, elegant and generous. In such a fast rotation, everything around you will become blurred, and only the face of the relative dance partner in his arms is clearly visible. Rotate, rotate, and rotate again. It seems that you want to turn to the old man in his arms. However, music will end after all. The end is the end. Colin completed the last rotation with a boneless Vera. Then he reluctantly recovered his right hand that held on Vera's smooth back, slightly retreated, and leaned over a gift. "Thank you, Miss Villa, this is the most memorable dance I skip." Vera's little face was still flushed, and she was slightly breathing, and it seemed that she hadn't slowed from the dance just now. When she heard Colin's unpreparedness, she smiled. "Cunning, Colin Knight, how can I feel that you said this to many girls?" Colin raised his head without panic. He knows that this time, what to do is not to justify, but offensive. So he said with a smile, "Please believe me, from now on, similar words, I will only say to you alone." Sure enough, Khalil's slightly straightforward words made Vera a bit unable to fight. "Hwawan," Vriggs gave a white glance, but with a shameful smile on his face. At this time, Colin had been able to feel the gaze of killing around. Obviously, successfully became the first dance partner of Vera, and Colin had naturally became the public enemy of the male nobles present. However, he obviously didn't care. Wyra is a rough leg, he is settled. Because he had seen the figure of Erluman in the crowd. The fear of being assassinated was shrouded in Colin's heart instantly, so he had to try to raise his value and let the other person taboo. After sending Vera back to the Marquis of Garcia, Colin rolled out. He understands the truth that he is still too late. At this time, it is a stupid behavior to wrap it beside Vera. Before he got out of him, a young man blocked Colin. Huh. Is the supporting role who sent the face appear so quickly? While thinking, Colin smiled politely. "Excuse me, are you?" The young man smiled coldly. "Colin Knight, I heard that you have used my identity, why, can't you recognize me?" Colin suffocated slightly and immediately realized who the person was in front of him. No wonder it looks familiar, just as annoying as the crazy woman. It is worthy of being a sister. It turned out to be the Cavaliers of the Consueto. For a long time, long-term leaning, Colin said for a long time, but there was no respect in his expression. Carnes obviously also looked at the Colin very uncomfortable. Yin and Yang said weirdly, "The Knight Cavaliers," you said. "If the noble Miss Villa knows that the knight who just danced with her was a liar, what would happen?" Facing the threat of Khan, Colin shrugged, as if he didn't care. "You don't know if you try it." Khan suddenly sank, and it seemed that he couldn't take the chloria whether there was really fear or pretending to be a gesture. But before he continued to test, he heard Colin suddenly lowered his voice, "However, if I am you, I will care about your good sister first." "What's wrong with my sister?" Seeing the other party hook, Colin smiled and provoked. "You know, it is your sister Cindy, a knight who really led the army to recover the Bingian city. Therefore, should it be her, not you. In accordance with the Lord's rules, should it be her, not you." Polying, K was like a kitten stepping on his tail, and suddenly fried. "I am the first heir of the Suduo family. In this case, you still keep saying in front of the Duke of St. Hilda." Colin spread his hand, signaling that the matter had nothing to do with him. This lacking appearance made Khan almost unable to control his anger, staring fiercely at Colin, panting. It seemed to be a very abominable guy in front of him. But soon, Cam was quiet. Because one palm pressed on his shoulder. Cam turned back, and his face immediately became smooth. "Uncle." Colin's pupils also shrank instantly, looking at the people count him on. Earl Colin lowered his head carefully and didn't want the other party to see the hidden in his eyes. Earl Uman is a mature and elegant middle-aged man with a faint smile on his face, as if he is polite to anyone. But the hint of hidden coldness revealed from time to time in his red eyes showed that the Earl was not a kind old man. "Colin, I'm really happy to see you." Earl Moomin also patted Colin's shoulder gently, with a smile on his face. "I heard that you were assassinated in the castle. What is going on? Who is so bold?" Colin raised his head, and had a kind smile on his face. "The assassin is Carter Cavaliers. As for who is behind him, I'm still investigating." "Carter," Earl Uman snorted lightly and angrily. "The unfamiliar white-eyed wolf is really a shame in the Cavaliers. You can rest assured that I will send someone to investigate this matter. If there is any news, you will notify you." "Thank you very much for your help." Colin looked at the county in front of him, and suddenly felt that this acting skills were not worse than Jill Charles. Earl Moomin took a few words of Colin, as if he was a friendly elder. Colin also coped with it, as if he had never suspected that his assassination was related to the Count in front of him. At the time of leaving, Count Uman lowered the volume and asked, "Did you discuss with Marquis of Charles to wear armor to attend the banquet together?" "No, just happened to think of it." Colin's was a little strange. Why did the other party suddenly ask this? Earl Uman said deeply, "Oh, that's good, but you must also be careful not to go too close to Marquis Charles." "Why?" Colin asked directly. Count Uman did not answer, but the Khan knight next to him mocked it with a high tone. "Stupid, Marquis Charles was so miserable this time, buried 200,000 northern troops. Don't you need to be responsible for this? You actually dare to get up." "Shut up," Earl Roman roared. The Khan knight suddenly shrank his head and turned into a quail again. Count Uman turned his head and finally said to Colin, "Remember, we are loyal, always the Duke of St. Hilda, not a marquis." Looking at the back of the Count Uman, Colin suddenly narrowed his eyes. He realized that the banquet tonight seemed to be brewing a dangerous undercurrent. This chapter is finished. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Original Vampire. Author, Ludo Busroot. Chapter 39. Chapter 39 Forced Palace, Part 1. People have 3 or 6 or 9. Nobles are no exception. There are big aristocrats, nobles but not completely aristocratic knights. The banquet of the Suduo family divided this kind of clear class. The Marquis, and Willa, are the core small circles in the banquet. Countless people squeezed their heads and wanted to get up, but they only dared to greeted them briefly, and they dared not wait for a long time. Outside of the core circle is a circle headed by Count Uman, 3 earls, and the owner of the banquet, the Suduo family. Going out, there are a lot of Vonants and Baron. The last circle is also the most popular, which is the knights including Colin. In fact, strictly speaking, Colin is also qualified to go to the circle of the Baron. However, he has now realized that the banquet was not as simple as it appeared on the surface, so he began to deliberately reduce his sense of presence. Ready to be a qualified onlooker. Don't look at the look of the church with Marquis in Colin before, but if the Marquis is really difficult to protect, then Clorin will never be dragged into the water for him to pull him. If it is Vera, then Colin may also consider how heroes save beauty, but the Marquis of Charles who like to pull people, and love to perform, also love to perform, please be blessing. The banquet continued, but the atmosphere seemed to have quietly changed. The music is still going on, but the center of the dance floor has long been empty. Even if he was at the outermost circle of the banquet, Colin had felt that the atmosphere around him began to become dignified. Through the enhanced hearing at night, Colin overheard the discussion of the knights around him. I do know when everyone has no longer talking about this lucky victory, but to turn the topic to their own losses. Indeed, the series of defeats under the command of Marquis of Charles almost buried almost 200,000 troops in the north. There are half of this, although half of the troops of the Sanhilder family, but half of the private army of major lords in the north. In addition, the blockbusters near the front line have been captured by the trolls. Even if they have now recovered, the giants will not have no criminal or empty-handed. Therefore, this time, the major lords in the north can be described as heavy losses. With such heavy losses, there must be a person who is responsible for this. As a result, the topic gradually began to be bad for Marquis Charles. Of course, the St. Hilda family accumulated prestige, and everyone did not dare to scold them bluntly, but complained a few words on the side. In Colin's view, such complaints could not hurt the fundamentals of Marquis of Charles at most made his reputation stink. Perhaps it will make the Sanhilder family feel guilty for this defeat. Later, it may be a little compensated to the major lords, but it is limited to this. If Earl Uman was not bluffed before, this small action should not be the main course of the banquet. Therefore, Colin continues to wait. Sure enough, Clorin then waited for a real explosive news. I heard, this time, the Marquis of Garcia led the Black Cavalry to support the front line, and I did not get the order from the Duke. What do you mean, the Marquis of Garcia sent troops privately? That's right, so the Marquis will stop in Bingian City, he is waiting for the Duke's military order. Oh, he has already sent troops privately, what military orders are waiting? Hush, what are you doing so loudly, find death. Nympho. Colin was speechless for a while, these people seemed to be whispering, but in fact, they did not hide too much. What's more, he has found that the gossip has almost spread throughout the banquet. At this time, he suddenly realized what the hidden undercurrent was going on. There is no doubt that Marquis Charles is still the real goal of these people. However, after all, he was the eldest son of the Duke, and the prestige of the St. Hilda family was unparalleled in the north. The lords and nobles who lost heavy losses were just dare to say about Marquis of Charles. However, if someone leads, it will be different. This person actually shows his position for a long time. For the first time, after seeing the Marquis of Charles, he pumped a whip of the other party under the public. Before the banquet tonight, he once again interrupted a performance of Marquis Charles. This he is naturally the commander of the Black Army, the first person in the Northern Army, the younger brother of the Duke, the Marquis of Garcia. Only when Marquis in Garcia explicitly shows his disrespect to Marquis of Charles, many of the remaining nobles dare to complain about a few words. But originally, I just stayed in complaints. However, When everyone learned that the Marquis of Garcia did not have the news of the Black Army without the Duke's order, the situation was different. Although the Black Army is the private army of the Marquis of Garcia, of course, the church was transferred to command. However, this is the North after all. The Duke of St. Hilda is the real master here. What's more, the Black Cavalry has already gone out of the Marquis leader. Shouldn't it be the first to get the Dukes first, right? Therefore, I do not know why the gossip news that spread on the banquet faintly revealed a signal. A dangerous signal. Marquis of Garcia and Dukes of St. Hilda discord. In fact, smart people should be able to detect the Dukes jealous of their younger brothers from 3 years ago when the Duke of St. Hilda hides in the snow. However, at that time, Marquis in Garcia did not violate his brother's order. But now, this time, under the defeat of Marquis in Charles, the Marquis of Garcia finally was dissatisfied with the elder brother who was his only relatives, and started to resist the initiative. You know, the Black Riding Army is an extremely terrible army. Although there are only 50,000 people, no one doubts whether it can sweep the north in the hands of the Marquis of Garcia. What's more, due to a series of miserable defeats of Marquis in Charles, the military strength of the north is now severely weakened. In this way, the Black Army seemed even more terrible. Therefore, this gossip will have such a terrifying effect. The Marquis of Garcia has repeatedly humiliated Marquis Charles. Is the younger generation who really wants to teach mistakes, or do you want to take the opportunity to express his dissatisfaction with the Duke of St. Hill? Think of the hints of Count and the current undercurrent at the banquet. Colin suddenly realized that a terrible storm was brewing. Once it is formed, it will have the terrorist power that sweeps throughout the north. As the atmosphere at the banquet became more and more dignified, I saw the Consuduo Cavaliers suddenly came to Marquis Charles. He first took a gift, then looked up, and asked the geology of Yi Zhenjun. Master Marquis, I want to ask, shouldn't anyone be responsible for this time in the northern border? Marquis Charles froze on the spot. Chuechio, Garcia, has no expression. In the audience, the crow was silent. Storm, officially coming. This chapter is finished. The Original Vampire. Author, Lugo Busroot. Chapter 40. Chapter 40 Forced Palace, below. Enjoying the gaze of everyone, Consuduo was a little fluttering. Especially the clear eyes that belonged to Miss Wyra made Con's face red and trembling. The heir of the Suduo family suddenly felt that if he went to invite Miss Villa at this time, he might not be rejected as before. He feels like a hero now. However, Colin looked at his eyes, as if he was looking at an idiot. Unexpectedly, it turned out that this guy came to be a head bird. The nobles present, after seeing the Cane Knight step forward to ask Marquis Charles, all showed excitement. Except only one person. This man is Con's sister, who is called a crazy woman by Colin, Zendaya Sudo. She looked at her brother's eyes full of fear. Why? Why is this banquet that should have made the Suduo family famous? If possible, she just wants to seal her brother's mouth and put him in the basement, and never let it go. Zendaya is very clear, perhaps Marquis of Charles has really caused anger, but after all, he is the first heir of the Sanhilder family. A Voere heir to his brother, what qualifications to ask? No, although her younger brother is stupid, he is by no means such guts. Otherwise, when Zendaya led the army to regain Binjian City, he would not continue to hide in the Falcon City. Thinking of this, she suddenly turned to look at the Count Iman. It seemed to be this good uncle. I just quietly said something in her brother's ears, and Consai suddenly stepped forward. Asinthan was cold in her heart, and she suddenly felt that the future of the Suduo family seemed to be dull. Cable, you are right, Marquis Charles did not care about the opponent's offense at all. I saw that he took a deep breath and asked sincerely, so, how do you think, what punishment can offset my previous fault? Con did not seem to be so speak well by Marquis of Charles. At this time, when he saw Marquis in Tang Tang so lowly waiting for his trial, Con trembled even more. But after excitement, Con was a little confused. He opened his mouth, but didn't dare to say what punishment was suitable for Marquis of Charles. Looking back quietly, Cain looked at his uncle with help. But the Count-Imam lowered his head at this time, as if he didn't know the changes in the outside world. Connie sank suddenly. But just when he wanted to retreat, he saw Villa's gaze again. In Con's view, it is full of encouragement, appreciation, and even admiration. As a result, the Cainite is full of strength again. Even the acne on the nose was faintly red with red light. For a moment, he felt super brave. Juazi, Cain's sharp voice echoed in the hall, as a punishment, you should take the initiative to give up the Marquis sites. Wow dash. Everyone was stunned. Even Marquis, who has always been outstanding in acting, did not know what reaction to make at a time. Colin looked at Con's gaze, and it was full of mercy. This is a kind of look at mental retardation. And Zendaya was already desperate at this time. Can the Marquis of Ju Charles keep her unknown, but the position of the Viscounts of the Suduo family seems to be guaranteed. The title of Marquis of Charles is blocked, representing his qualifications as the first heir as the Duke of St. Hilda. It also represents the face of the Duke of St. Hilda. Let the Marquis of Charles abandon the title, this is not punishing Charles, but playing the face of the Duke of St. Hilda. It's forcing the Lord of the North to admit your mistakes. It's forcing the palace. The music finally stopped. The atmosphere in the banquet hall was stagnant as if it was ashamed. The eyes of the audience were concentrated on Marquis and crones of Charles. The Cain Cavaliers originally enjoyed the focus of the audience, but now, he feels like his back. The cold sweat fell off a drop. Karine once again looked for the goddess in his heart Vera's gaze. But Vera didn't look at him at this time. Instead, he looked at his brother Marquis of Charles. Cam's face was pale instantly, as if finally realized what kind of stupid thing he had done. Marquis on the opposite side was ugly at this time. He also didn't know how to deal with it. He couldn't agree, and he couldn't agree. This is not the issue of glory and disgrace of him alone. It involved his father's face, and even the prestige of the St. Hilda family. When is the master of the northern border, when is the turn to make a group of aristocrats draw on their own heirs? Marquis Charles did not go to see Con, who looked uneasy, this idiot was just a gun that was pushed out. His gaze crossed Ken and slowly swept the audience. But I didn't see any friendly and supportive eyes. At this time, he gradually realized that this storm was probably premeditated. It's not just himself, but also his father. Then he can't give up. Take a step back, it is the broken bone. So, Marquis Charles took a few steps forward, crossed Ken, facing the nobles who faced the venue, and looked at it. Who else thinks I should give up the title, please stand up. He was unwilling to go to Lycan's puppet, but wanted to force the real behind-the-scenes messenger. Moreover, he did not believe that the San Hilda family ruled the North for thousands of years. Is there a risk of falling apart from a defeat? The audience was silent. The millennium of the St. Hilda family is not simply speaking in the North. As a result, the banquet was embarrassed again. For a long time, a voice finally broke the situation. Sorry, Master Marquis, the child of Con is still young and ignorant if there is offended between words, I hope the Marquis can contain. Standing up was Count Uman. However, he did not continue to target Marquis of Charles, but was breaking away for Con. It was also given a step under Marquis. Colin was a little puzzled. Is this Earl Earman who is really loyal to the Duke of St. Hilda and hasn't he participated in this conspiracy for Marquis of Charles? But soon, the next sentence of Earl Uman dispelled the idea of Colin just now. Master Garcia, What do you think is suitable for the fault that John of Charles has made before? The Marquis of Garcia heard that it seemed to wake up in the state of leisurely. In the eyes of the public, he slowly got up, slowly came to the stage, and stood side by side with Marquis of Charles. Marquis Charles had to bow slightly, stepped back half a step, and gave the C position out. Facing the Khan Knight, Erluman, or any nobleman present, Marquis Charles will not give up. However, the Garcia Marquis is except. Because the commander of this black army really has the strength to lift the table. Marquis Charles is not allowed now. His uncle, do you want to lift the table? Is it all in the north of the northern borders who are dissatisfied with their dissatisfaction, or is it secretly planned by the Marquis of Garcia? If it is the former, Charles is not very worried. If the latter one. Charles Marquis Garcia finally spoke. Uncle Marquis Charles lowered his head slightly and waited for the trial. The life of the 200,000 northern generals, what are you gathered? Boom. The Marquis of Charles was hit by a lightning. The whole person stood on the spot. What else can he use? The Marquis of Charles looked up and looked at his uncle in shock. As if I really met him for the first time. Nympho. Colin looked at this scene, and a word flashed in his heart. See the poor dagger. This chapter is finished.